This tank is one of the weirdest vehicles that I've played, because when I first originally tried out the Leopard PTA, which is the feature of today's World of Tanks console video, I didn't like it. However, having fully upgraded this thing, it is amazing, and that is because it has pretty much everything you could possibly need as a medium tank within the game. And so we're going to cover everything that you need to know about this vehicle, as well as try and showcase how you can play better in maybe your medium tanks if you do indeed have a playstyle like mine, and hopefully my experience of playing World of Tanks might help you out. Obviously, if you are a better player than me, which you may well be, then of course you might be able to help me out. But regardless, what we're going to showcase is this vehicle, and we're going to have two really decent gameplays in it. They're not completely the most outrageous games, because we don't usually have the most outrageous games on the channel, but yeah, they definitely showcase a few things about this vehicle and how you can kind of take advantage of these things. So the key thing within this replay is that we kind of took the aggressive playstyle of the Leopard PTA and applied it to the game to be able to come out with a really nice damage result. So this doesn't really include a whole lot of assistance damage, but we can talk about how you can get assistance damage with this vehicle and potentially the ways in which you could alter how much assistance you're going to be able to pick up. So within this replay in particular, you see us taking this sort of position, and that allows us to get into a nice starting position, allows us to potentially get some spotting damage if we do spot someone, and also allows us to kind of pull back down the ridgeline should we need to avoid taking any hits if we do indeed find anyone. So you can see here, these are some of the things that you should be doing in your own game, not bouncing, but trying to aim for the tracks of the vehicles you'll be coming up against. Like you can see here, we're aiming at the T110E4's tracks. We of course pen him, we actually detrack him, and then we get some assistance damage. So if you're ever going for marks of excellence, this is one of the best ways, if not the best way, to be able to complete that, is dealing damage as well as getting assistance damage. And it's very kind of mundane, it's very obvious, and I'm sure you guys already know that, but if you really do try and apply it to your gameplay, there's very few people that probably actually apply it to the gameplay. They know about it, you know, sometimes you'll do it, but if you intentionally go out of your way to aim for the tracks and go for the damaging hits by positioning yourself in such a way that allows you to do that, as well as being able to get assistance damage, then that is the way to go with vehicles like this. And that's how the top players, you know, the elite, I guess, I don't know, the top 1% in the game have games from being just an average game to utterly insane and ridiculous games, to the point where not only are they getting spotting damage, but they're getting actual damage as well. So this KV4 obviously pushing down pretty aggressively, and from this point we're going to go for that lower plate, and we have more than enough penetration to do so. We obviously in the Leopard PTA do not have armor, but for some reason this guy is just a bot and decides he's just going to come and try and YOLO. Don't quite know what that guy was doing, but then literally instantly after, the AMX-30 does the exact same thing. I have no idea what these guys were doing, obviously YOLOing and throwing it for their team, but we won't care too much because now what we can do is farm. And these are the sorts of positions you want to be taking in vehicles like the Leopard PTA. It applies to any of the medium tanks in the game. You've got to be in a position to consistently deal damage, especially when you think, like, for example, a tier 9 in the game. Luckily this one has 390 alpha, but if you were playing a typical medium tank, you'd most likely have 320 or somewhere in that region, as opposed to the 390 of this one, or maybe even 400, I can't remember. I believe it's 390 on the tier 9, but essentially what you can do is you can consistently deal damage by making sure that you position yourself in such a way that you can actually shoot. Because if you can't shoot, that you could have 1,000 alpha or you could have 50 alpha. It doesn't make a difference. So you've got to make sure that every single time that you are reloaded, well, you'd hope that every single time you're reloaded that you'd be able to fire. Now that is not always the case. I'm not going to BS you and tell you that every single time, if you just do this one trick, you're going to be able to be firing constantly. But if you keep the consistent aggression whilst also noticing the kind of things that you should be wary of in the game, because you don't have armor in this thing like this, and typically all tier 9 mediums, there are a few things you can kind of counteract with the playstyle of the Leopard PTA. And you don't always have to go for this aggressive playstyle. You can use it as a sniper, and in certain situations that is probably the way you want to be going with the PTA, because what you can do is you can take a bit of an approach in which you kind of retreat away after you realise that maybe the game isn't going how you're expecting, and you're having to reposition using the speed of the Leopard PTA, because you can see here we're going about 60 kilometers an hour, and of course when you get up to top speed you can look at about 65 kilometers an hour. But here we see us chasing down the AMX-30, one of the other AMX-30s in the game, obviously the first one YOLOing straight towards us. But in these games, it's really not one of those things where you just YOLO in, because the PTA, it has the alpha of some of the tier 9 heavy tanks. Some heavy tanks may have 390. It's probably on the fewer side. There's probably more with 490 or higher. But if you do find yourself in a position where you maybe are forced into some close quarters engagements with tier 9 or tier 10 heavy tanks, it's not as bad as it might be playing in something with 320 alpha, where, you know, if they do actually hit you and you hit them, you're losing maybe 100 damage, and when you're playing against heavy tanks which have more hit points generally, then you're going to be ending up in a pretty bad fight if you're trading 1-for-1. Whereas in most cases, if you do play it correctly and you're playing in a way that avoids, YOLOing in and stuff like that, then you can come up on top. Now we go for the shot on the Maus because we know that he did cross in the central area, and then we also know that there is a 57 heavy. Now we have a little bit of an unfortunate shot there into the side of the 57 heavy because our tank kind of moved. Don't know if I was suffering from lag as I usually do on this game, which is unfortunate, but hopefully that will be sorted. You could see there literally just suddenly turns. This is the sort of stuff I have to deal with when playing World of Tanks console at the moment, but fingers crossed the internet will get better very shortly. But you can see here we're a little bit wary to come around that corner. Obviously knowing your targets is super critical, because there is a 57 heavy who can quite easily punish us really easily, and of course if he does decide he's going to just YOLO us, we are a 2-shot for him, so it's really imperative that we don't get caught out. Now he, for example, has kind of got into a pretty bad position, I guess. Well, not a bad position, but when there's 6 tanks or 7 tanks around you, there's not much you can do. But we do finally actually get a final shot off into the Maus, bringing the game really nicely up to about 6,500 damage, or just under. Combined damage, we looked at a near 7,000 combined damage, and this was really to showcase the power of medium tanks, and of course picking up 2,003 base experience, which was massive, and a ton of XP, because it was using a ×4 XP booster, which obviously when we're trying to grind towards the Leopard 1, which I am very close to at this point in the game, and hopefully we'll do a tier 10 review of the tier 10 version of this, which is very similar, but slightly better. So let's jump into the next gameplay. Trust me, this one is a fantastic one as well, that showcases a different aspect of the Leopard PTA. Now the next game is of course Tiepval Ridge, and with Tiepval Ridge it's a map that can be kind of tedious in some regards, because if you're playing in a kind of a tank that isn't very flexible, so if you don't have gun depression, it can be a little bit annoying because you're limited in the avenues that you can go to, or potentially even if you aren't limited, you can just basically not take advantage of the best positions in the game, because they do require usually a little bit of gun depression, or at least a little bit of mobility to get there without taking any hits and stuff like that. Or alternatively, you need a bit of speed to be able to get away safely in the game. So straight away we do spot the Vengeance on the enemy team, and he gets taken out like super quickly. I feel bad for him because we outspotted him. Obviously we have got, I believe, coated optics on this vehicle. We've also got advanced loader or advanced rammer or something like that. I don't know what it's called on console at this point. They keep changing the names. But then we've also got the ventilation as well, just to boost that up. You could potentially go for the camo as well, camo net, if you want to go for a stealth build for some spotting damage, or alternatively you could go for a few of the other options, whereby, you know, you could go for some speed if you want to make sure that you are at top speed all of the time, or you can go for more of the kind of main armament, of course, vertical stabilizers, which might be very useful just to reduce the accuracy or increase the accuracy, reduce the dispersion of the vehicle when on the move, which is really, really nice, and just in general be able to be a hell of a lot more accurate, which I highly recommend, especially if you're a newer player or someone less experienced at playing medium tanks. Having the vertical stabilizer can really help you out, since you don't have to necessarily aim 100% like correctly all of the time, because sometimes you can get saved by the vertical stabilizers just giving you that extra bit of accuracy. So in this game we managed to do 1,400 damage and pick up 1,059 assistance, which is by no means a bad game. You can certainly be very happy with, at this point in the game, having that sort of result. But remember, like we've talked about, you want to be being constantly useful within the games as medium tanks, because there's nothing worse than on your team you get a medium tank who's sat at the back and they just farm damage at the end of the game, which has helped to absolutely no one other than themselves, I guess. And so yeah, you really want people that are kind of gonna push forward, help you out, and make the decisions that are going to come with the winning of the game. And you can see here we're going after the M4A1 Revelarize, who's pushed up way too hard. He then misses his shell, so it's just good night at that point, and we shut him down quite easily. We then got obviously our team pushing into the western side of the map, and we try and get a shot on the SU. I have no idea where that went. I mean, it was pretty much all on him. But it doesn't matter all too much. And then of course we fully aim and it just misses, or at least it hits him but bounces. Then we get penned by what looks to be the Cobra. Of course the Cobra being the tier 9 medium that Wargaming have brought in, that has the Hesh rounds that can deal 500 alpha, and you get, I believe, like 6 shells or something. Not 6 shells, I believe you get like 4 rounds or something like that in very, very quick succession, so it's pretty ridiculous. But at this point we're just now trying to farm up as much damage in the game as possible, since we may go for 3 marks in this vehicle at a later date, but I'm not entirely sure. It just really depends on time commitments of just trying to grind out as many vehicles as I possibly can to review them for you guys, because remember, I do not get a community contributor account, which allows me to get all of the vehicles to be able to test them out. This is my personal account. All of the gameplay on World of Tanks console is my own. There is no kind of replays from other people, etc. So yeah, every single time I have to make a video, which is almost every day at this point, is of course myself. So yeah, it can be a little bit challenging to get really, really good replays all of the time, which is where, you know, the update news and stuff like that comes in to kind of help out, and so that I don't have to just post subpar content, because it's not, I don't want to post a video of me doing, I don't know, 3k damage in a tier 10 or something like that, unless it's kind of like a live replay showcasing a vehicle or something like that, you know, something that is beneficial other than just like showcasing the tank and the gameplay. But you can see here the great accuracy of the Leopard, moving back into the Leopard itself, and you can see 4,800 damage and 1,059 assistance is by no means a bad game. That would certainly be a game that would increase your marks of excellence if you were at like 95%. It would be a game that would allow you to go up to 100% potentially, if you were at 99%. You know, if you're grinding out those really, really difficult levels of your marks of excellence, if you're you're interested in any of that, then a game like this would certainly increase it regardless of where you're at on the Marks of Excellence percentage. So yeah, if you can get these as much as possible, then it's going to be really, really beneficial. And in fact, when I was playing the Leopard PTA, I was just having a good day in general, picking up thousands and thousands of damage, playing in loads of different tanks, and we've got a ton of really good replays for you to actually have a look at if you're interested in that. Unfortunately, we do miss the shell on the tracks of the E75 as we came around. I should have probably actually fully aimed that, and of course he wouldn't have been able to take me out anyway in one shell. But we didn't do that, and we didn't get the assistance damage, and we didn't actually even get the damage from it either. But nonetheless, 5,200 damage and 1,000 assistance brings it up to 6,200 combined, and a brilliant result as well. Not only for the damage, the assistance, and the vehicle XP, but in general, it was actually a really, really fun game to actually play, and that's what the Leopard PTA in World of Tanks is all about. It's really, really fun to play, super, super good, and hopefully you guys will go towards the Leopard 1. Of course, it was on track, so if you haven't already, unfortunately, you probably won't be able to get the on-track event to the Leopard 1 for like a year, I would expect, at this point, since they've just basically grind through a ton of all of the various different tech tree lines, one at a time. But maybe a premium bonus will come up at some point where you can get an extra 50% more XP and 50% more silver when playing this vehicle. Hopefully, fingers crossed for you guys, because this line was fantastic. I really did enjoy it. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you want to check out a video very, very similar to this, which showcases the tier 10 premium tanks, then I highly recommend you check out the gameplay and tank reviews playlist, which most recently has included, I believe, 2 tier 10 premium tanks that are really, really good, the Quillin and the Valor T95, which is the Chieftain. And on the left hand side you'll see a random gameplay that should showcase something similar to the Leopard PTA. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and I hope I'll see you in one of those. Goodbye.